Greetings. In today's video, we're going to take a real close look at the sound system for the Wurlitzer 1015 jukebox. It was made in 1946 and 1947. There were about 56,000 of them built. It's probably the most iconic of all jukeboxes. I think if you went up to anybody and asked them to picture in their mind a jukebox, they would probably picture the 1015. Those of us who are old enough to remember the TV series Cheers, the 1015 in the bar was a featured player. So today we'll take a look at a part of it that's generally not closely scrutinized, and that is the sound system. This is a particularly nice Wurlitzer 1015 amp that I picked up years ago. It's still in all original paint with the original tube socket markings and everything still present. It's very unusual to find one like this. They usually get soaked in grease and have certain stains and damage to them that require that they be completely refinished. But this one came through just as you see it. I had to do some cleaning, but the paint is completely original. As you can see, this is called the Wurlitzer Model 503 amplifier. It says 50 to 60 cycle, so that it could be used really in Europe or the United States. There was a 25 cycle version called a Model 504 that was used probably up in the Northeast. This was made in North Tonawanda, New York. That's where the Wurlitzer jukebox factory was. And nearby in Niagara Falls, they were using 25 cycle current. It was used particularly for motors. And in this case, if you had a 504 amp, the power transformer would be different. It was much taller, much larger transformer. Those amps are extremely unusual. I've only seen one or two in my life. But this is the more normal 60 cycle one that we use in the United States. Starting on the left is the plug for the electrodynamic speaker. The electrodynamic speakers, I think most of you are aware, used an electromagnet rather than a permanent magnet. And that electromagnet winding was served as the filter choke for the power supply. So you really killed two birds with one stone. It made a lot of sense. It's the way they built them back in the 40s. They shifted to regular permanent magnet speakers that we're accustomed to in the 50s and 60s. So really 4 of these wires here. There's 2 pairs. 2 will go to the voice coil, which is 8 ohms. 2 will go to the electromagnetic coil winding, which in this case was 5,200 ohms of impedance. Had the fuse, 5U4 rectifier, a pair of 6L6G tubes. I have GBs in this one. The original Gs, the pre-war jukeboxes used the metal 6L6s, but these sockets are labeled for the 6L6G. In this amp, there are 2 stages of amplification. The first tube to receive the signal from the cartridge of the jukebox is the 6J5 tube here, and then it will go to the 6SC7 for the second phase of amplification. This amplifier does not use a tube phase inverter, but instead uses this transformer to drive the 2 6L6s. The capacitors were always the CAN capacitors like this. In this one I have changed to a new CAN capacitor. That is the only thing about this that is not completely original to the eye, and it was absolutely essential on this one because the filter capacitors were in terrible shape. The tone compensators are here with a really nice ivory plate. The post-war amps had white plates. The pre-war amps had black plates. You can always look at one of these and pretty quickly tell whether you've got a pre- or post-war amplifier. Separate bass and treble controls. Okay, let's turn it over and take a look inside. As you can see, the bottom of these amps is protected by a heavy steel plate. I think probably to keep mice away from the innards of the amplifier, where they would chew up the wiring and cause all sorts of short circuits. Having worked on these things for many years, I can tell you that mice are a problem. Okay, let's take a look at the inside of the amp. You notice that everything is, the metal surfaces are all copper plated. We've got the original rayon cord coming in and going through these insulating sleeves to the power transformer, rectifier, and power supply. This is the output transformer for the 6L6s. They didn't skimp. It's a good size, heavy transformer. And here's a feature that is unique to jukeboxes. Now, with guitar amps, we're all accustomed to plugging them in, turning them on, and what do you wait? 15 or 20 seconds for the tubes to warm up. Well, in a jukebox, that won't work, because if somebody puts their nickel or dime in and the first 15 seconds or 20 seconds of the song, there is no volume because the tubes haven't warmed up, well, that's going to be a deal breaker. So they put in a Quickstart relay. The Quickstart relay works like this. When the amp is at rest, this contact, you see how this pivots, this one connects up here, which engages a 9.6 volt winding in the power transformer to the heaters of the two 6L6s. So for a brief period of time, these things are getting 50% more voltage. They're going to heat up really fast. If you look at the tubes, they do tend to glow real bright, and then once the tubes start drawing current, which happens in a matter of, probably 2 or 3 seconds, then this solenoid is activated, pulls this down, and we go to the 6.3 volt winding of the transformer. So the tubes, the 6L6s, when the amp starts up, will sort of flare up fairly bright at 9.6 volts and then calm back down to about 6.3. The jukebox mechanism, fortunately, takes 2 or 3 seconds, maybe more, 4 or 5, to get the record in playing position, so there's plenty of time for these tubes to warm up. And this was a really clever idea. The rest of the amp is rather unremarkable. There's a few of the old solar capacitors that I left in place because they're pretty well bulletproof. This is where the original filter capacitor was not used, but it had dried up and was leaking badly. But you leave them in place so that when you look at the outside of the amp, it looks original and fine. Otherwise, you'd have a gaping hole here that would be ugly as sin. Okay, so that's the inner workings, tone controls. The volume control of this amp was in a separate box that was located about waist high in the back of the jukebox with a key to operate the potentiometer that controlled volume. The key was removable and usually was held by like a bartender or somebody in charge of the location where the jukebox was playing, to prevent people from just going over randomly, customers, and changing the volume of the jukebox, which as the night progressed and the drinking was getting a little heavy, I can imagine the jukebox would tend to get real loud. Also, somebody might walk over when one of their enemy's favorite songs was playing and turn it down just to be mean, and then you'd have a fight. So just to kind of keep the peace in the location, the volume control was key operated. Okay, that's the interior of this. And as you can see, it's very straightforward and not unlike a guitar amplifier. This is an original Wurlitzer schematic for the 503 amp from the Wurlitzer 1015 jukebox. These jukeboxes originally used a magnetic pickup that tracked at about 3.5 ounces. If you can imagine that. Nowadays, 3.5 grams is heavy. 3.5 ounces, it would destroy records in short order, and the records would have to be changed out, the popular ones, out of the jukeboxes every week. It connects here to the volume control box, which is separate from the amplifier. There are certain circuit features here to compensate for the magnetic pickup and to give proper tone and volume. Volume control here, plugs into the amplifier and goes to the 6J5 tube through the tone controls that are on the amplifier chassis to the 6SC7. It then, which powers this transformer, which drives the two 6L6s, which in turn drive the output transformer, the big one that we saw inside the chassis, and that sends the signal to the big 15-inch electrodynamic speaker. It has a 5200 ohm field coil and an 8 ohm voice coil. Here's the power supply, 5U4 rectifier, and the Quickstart relay. Well, there you have it. On paper, it doesn't look all that impressive. It's a very simple design. But after World War II, Wurlitzer jukeboxes were probably responsible for more people meeting and falling in love, or at least acting like they were, than any other object at the time. Okay, so a lot of us baby boomers probably owe our existence to this circuit. For that reason, it'll always hold a dear place in my heart. Well, this is where the sound system of the Wurlitzer 1015 usually hangs out. There is a big speaker baffle door like this with a inner baffle that is rubber mounted to absorb vibration. We've got the 15-inch electrodynamic speaker here with the giant 5200 ohm field coil on the rear. We've got the 4-wire cable that plugs into the amplifier, which is nestled safely in the rear on its own shelf. As you can see, there's like a semi-roof over the top to protect it from, part of it at least, from oil and falling objects, which might damage the tubes. Tube chart over on the side in case any tubes need to be replaced. Oil drip pan here to catch any oil or anything dripping from the mechanism and keep it off the floor. Here we are at the rear of the jukebox with the upper back door removed. You can see the amplifier sitting on its shelf. The 15-inch electrodynamic speaker is on the baffle. And the volume control box that I discussed earlier that's separate from the chassis is located over here on the wall with the key to operate the potentiometer. Now we'll watch the amp as it plays a record. Watch for the initially bright 9.6 volt filament illumination that will calm down to the normal 6.3 volts once the tube starts drawing current. Right. There it goes, down to 6.3.